The extra deck, arguably the most important part of your deck building process. In this video, we're going to cover 10 extra deck monsters that you need for your long-term progression in Duel Links. If you're a free-to-play player, or you're just gem conscious, I'll be giving advice throughout this video for how you should approach acquiring these cards. Let's go! Before we begin, it's important to mention what makes an extra deck investment good. The first thing is how generic the summoning requirements are. There are a lot of really strong extra deck monsters that are only good in very specific decks. Of course, you'll need those too, but you want to be efficient with your gems, and long-term progression is built by being able to reuse as many cards as possible in the decks you make. Next is how useful the effect actually is. Big picture, we want to invest in cards that will continue to be good as the game gets power crept. And finally, is how easy the card is to acquire. Most cards on this list are cheap, in a mini box, or they're really strong and are worth going into a main box for, or even using a dream ticket. Don't be discouraged by this list. I don't even have all these cards yet. This should mainly be inspiration and help you strategize what to acquire next to improve your account. Now let's get into it. Starting this list off strong, we have Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller is a generic rank 4 that takes 2 level 4 monsters to summon. As a quick effect, you can detach 1 Xyz material to negate all effects that activate in your opponent's graveyard for the rest of the turn. This effect is ridiculously strong. See, in Yu-Gi-Oh, your graveyard is pretty much a second hand, so blocking out your opponent's access to their resources at a critical moment in their combo can mean winning the game. The popularity of this card fluctuates depending on the current format, but its effect will always be competitive. Slap a busted quick effect on an easy to summon rank 4 monster that most decks can make, and you have a major threat to the meta.
Nice.
Abyss Dweller is available in the Photon of Galaxy mini box, which has a lot of other valuable cards too, so that definitely makes it a good investment for your long-term progression. Coming in next, we have another Xyz monster, and it's Castel, the Skyblaster Musketeer. Again, only requiring 2 level 4 monsters, Castel offers insane turn 2 adaptability. On one hand, you can detach 1 Xyz material to change a face-up monster to face-down defense position. Book of Moon is one of the most popular spells in the game, so having access to its effect generically is really good. But there's more. Castel's second effect allows you to detach 2 Xyz materials to shuffle a face-up card on the field back to the deck. Remember when I mentioned that the graveyard is basically your second hand? Shuffling a card back to the deck is arguably the best form of removal in the game because of this. It completely stops your opponent from utilizing that card as a resource once it leaves the field. So getting 2 busted effects on 1 easy to summon monster, it's no surprise that Castel makes it on this list. He's currently ranked 22nd in overall usage, and you can acquire him in the World of Barian mini box. While you're at it, if you'd like, you can pick up cards for a Tenyi deck, which has been competitive since release and currently sits at mid to high rogue tier. Coming up next, we have Clearwing Synchro Dragon. As a generic level 7 synchro, it only requires 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters to summon. It's currently the most popular synchro in the game, and for good reason too. First, when a level 5 or higher monster on the field activates an effect, you can negate and destroy it. Second, when any monster's effect is activated that targets a level 5 or higher monster on the field, negate that activation and destroy it. And Clearwing itself is level 7, so it has inherent protection. Your opponent is a fool if they try to use Effect Veiler on you. Also, to make this card even better, if it destroyed a monster on the field due to one of its effects, it gains that monster's original attack until the end of this turn, making it not only a good disruptive card, but also an OTK machine. Now, if you can make a level 7 synchro, odds are this will be in your deck. Having 2 negates, one being a form of protection, and being able to gain attack to help with an OTK, this card is a no-brainer. You can get this in the Wings of Clearness mini box, and you should definitely try to pick it up if you're into synchro strategies. Next on this list, we have our first Link monster, and that's Boral Sword Dragon. This Link 4 requires 3 or more effect monsters to summon. Now, what makes this resource intensive card so good? As a quick effect, you can target an attack position monster on the field and change it to defense position. And if you did this on your turn, Boral Sword can attack twice, and as a cherry on top, your opponent cannot respond to this effect's activation. This effect is spell speed 4. They are not chaining any droplets to this effect. And if attacking twice in a turn with a 3000 beat stick wasn't enough to finish off your opponent's 4000 life points, then its other effect lets you half the attack of a monster it faces in battle during your turn and gain that attack for itself. That means that you're guaranteed dealing 3000 damage to your opponent with one of your 2 attacks. Oh, and I didn't even mention that it can't be destroyed by battle either, so it's safe to say this card is worth picking up even if it's in a main box. Keep in mind that we might get Access Code Talker in the future, which is a strict upgrade over Borrelsword Dragon. But we have no idea if or when that will be released, and even then, Borrelsword Dragon will still be good as its main purpose is to be an OTK machine. And let me tell you, this thing can OTK. If you like blowing up the field, this next card is for you. We got Unchained Abomination. This generic Link 4 monster requires 2 or more monsters, including a Link monster. Another resource intensive card, but I promise its effect is worth it. If a card on the field is destroyed by a card effect, destroy a card. If a monster on the field is destroyed by battle, destroy a card. When you or your opponent decide to end the turn, destroy a card. Basically, punish your opponent for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! That's what this card does, and it does it well. It's good for going first or second, and it's available in the Destroyer of Phantasm mini box. While you're there, you might consider picking up an Unchained deck. It's currently a major meta contender, and it's seen very consistent play in the TCG, even right now. So maybe it's worth choosing as your next deck. Either way though, you're gonna want this card. Up next is the best generic rank 8 monster in the game, Dingirsu, the Orchest of the Evening Star. What does Dingirsu do? Well, it takes 2 level 8 monsters, or if you're running the Orchest engine, you can also use an Orchest Link monster as the Xyz material. On summon, Dingirsu will let you either send 1 card your opponent controls to the graveyard, or attach one of your banished machine monsters to it as an Xyz material. I wasn't paraphrasing when I said you can send 1 card your opponent controls to the graveyard. It literally says that on the card. This is straight up power creep. How? First of all, it doesn't target, which in simple terms means your opponent doesn't know what card you're going to send to the graveyard when you activate Dingirsu's effect. For example, if you were to activate Mystical Space Typhoon and target your opponent's middle back row, they can see what card you want to destroy, so that gives them the opportunity to decide whether to activate that back row before it's destroyed. See, with Dingirsu, because it doesn't target, your opponent will be put in a slightly trickier situation. Because they don't know what card you're going to send to the graveyard, they might even be forced to activate a card early because they're too scared of you getting rid of it. Which even better for you, because that means you can just choose a different card to send to the graveyard instead. Also, keep note of the phrase send to the graveyard. See, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a confusing game. Sending to the graveyard is actually a better effect than destroying a card and sending it to the graveyard. Even though they sound like they're the same thing, they aren't. It comes down to semantics, but there are plenty of cards that respond specifically to destruction effects. Take the last card we talked about. Let's say your opponent has an Unchained Abomination on the field. If you were to summon Dingirsu and decide to send a problem card from the field to the graveyard, they would not be able to activate Abomination's effect because its activation requirement is that a card on the field was destroyed, not just sent to the graveyard. Although, even if Abomination could respond to Dingirsu's effect to destroy a card you control, Dingirsu has a second effect that protects any of your cards from being destroyed by battle or card effect by simply detaching an Xyz material from it instead. A straight up powerhouse of a monster. I assure you that most decks that play rank 8 monsters will want to have this in there. You can acquire it in the Soul Flare Lightning main box, which has compulsory evacuation device and most of the Orchest engine in there as well. You also get a bunch of other meta relevant cards. This is definitely a card worth obtaining. Spend your gems, use a dream ticket, get it. Another great card you need in your account is Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal. Being rank 6, Beatrice is a little bit more difficult to summon relative to the other Xyz monsters I mentioned, but she's limit 1 for a reason. Her effect is insane. I keep bringing up the idea that the graveyard is a resource, and this is the first card on the list that actually leverages that to its advantage. As a quick effect, by detaching 1 Xyz material, Beatrice will send 1 card from your deck to the graveyard. Now, that might not sound crazy at first, until you look at all the cracked plays she enables. On your turn, she can help you combo, and because it's a quick effect, on your opponent's turn, she will allow you to disrupt their plays as well. Obviously, most decks are able to benefit from having a critical combo piece in the graveyard, but here are some notable targets that you can use to disrupt your opponent on their turn. Farfa of the Burning Abyss, which will banish a card on the field until the end phase, a great disruption on your opponent's turn. Shaddoll Dragon to destroy an opponent's spell or trap. And Mischief of the Gnomes, which was historically used in the infamous Tier 0 Tachyon meta. And as great as all that sounds, Beatrice actually has two other things that make her a top tier card. First, you can actually summon her with Dante if you send a Burning Abyss monster from your hand to the graveyard. You can't activate her effect the same turn you summoned her this way, but this is just another way to get her out if your deck can make Dante and has a small Burning Abyss package. And if all that wasn't enough, when she's destroyed by your opponent's card, she floats into Virgil of the Burning Abyss, which is a level 6 2500 attack beatstick that also has a floating effect to draw you a card when it's destroyed. These floating effects are overkill. After describing her effect here, you won't be surprised to know that she was recently banned in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG for being too powerful for the modern format. If that doesn't speak to how strong she is, I'm not sure what will. Acquiring these two can be difficult because they're in two different boxes, so I would use a Super Rare Dream ticket on one of them. Beatrice is available in the Heart of XC's mini box. If you happen to pick up Photons when you were pulling for Abyss Dweller, there are a bunch of Galaxy and Photon support in this box as well. Plus, you can pick up number 11 Big Eye, which is another great card that didn't make it on this list. Virgil, on the other hand, can be pulled from the fantastic Arc main box, which has Dante, Baxi of the Enzing if you got Tenyu cards while pulling for Castel, and Evil Swarm Nightmare, which is another contender for this list. Out of the two of them, I would personally use a Dream Ticket on Virgil, but depending on the decks you're building, you can't really go wrong as long as you manage to get these two. Alright, transitioning into the next card on the list, we have Linkuriboh. Linkuriboh is a Link 1 monster that requires one level 1 monster. Wow, that's a tongue twister, but its effect is really simple. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, change that monster's attack to 0 until the end of the turn. Also, if Linkuriboh's in your graveyard, as a quick effect, you contribute a level 1 monster to special summon itself back to the field. You might be surprised to know that Linkuriboh is actually banned in the modern TCG because of how strong it's been the last few years. You know this Duel Links video is spicy when we have 2 forbidden TCG cards in it. Well, to be clear, unlike Beatrice, it's not that Linkuriboh's effect itself is broken, it's more so that the pool of level 1 monsters in the game are broken. They even have a really powerful spell card called 1 for 1, which at the cost of discarding a card, lets you bring out any level 1 monster from your deck. That is a -1 in card advantage, yet in Duel Links, it's a limit 1. That's how you know that the level 1 roster is busted. To give you some specific examples from decks you've played against, we have Glow Up Bloom, Black Metal Dragon, and Chaos Summoning Beast, which we recently saw in the Sacred Beast deck. What do all these cards have in common? Graveyard effects. If Glow Up Bloom is sent to the graveyard, you can search your deck for any level 5 or higher zombie monster or the Zombie World field spell. If Black Metal Dragon is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can search your deck for any Red Eyes card. And you can banish Chaos Summoning Beast from your graveyard to search Fallen Paradise from your deck. You get the idea. Dump these level 1s in the grave so they can search your deck, and keep a body on the field with a battle protection effect. Linkuriboh didn't get banned in the TCG for its effect being too good, but instead was banned because of the crazy plays it enabled. And the best part is, in Duel Links, this card is completely free to play. You just need to level up Playmaker and AI to 35. Alright, and I'm going to combine the first and second spots on this list, and that's because we have both Nightmare Phoenix and Nightmare Unicorn. They don't need any introduction, they are some of the most versatile cards in the game. Let's take a look at Nightmare Phoenix. It's a Link 2 that requires 2 monsters with different names. On summon, you can discard a card to target one spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy it. Literally every deck in the game can make this, unless you have a bolt skill that limits what cards you can use. Having access to a mystical Space Typhoon at any point is a really valuable effect to have. It's effective and easy to summon, which is why it's the most used monster in Duel Links. Alright, well what could be better than that? Nightmare Unicorn. So, it reads almost exactly the same as Phoenix, but instead of just destroying one spell or trap your opponent controls, you can discard a card to shuffle any card on the field back to the deck. In some ways, this is even more powerful than Castel. Remember, Castel has a similar effect, but Unicorn is more generic, only requiring 2 or more monsters with different names. But one of Unicorn's downsides is that it's Link 3, so it takes more resources than both Castel and Nightmare Phoenix. But let's compare the Nightmares to Castel for a second. Let's say you Xyz summon Castel with the intention of shuffling one of your opponent's cards back to the deck. Well, if after you summon Castel, your opponent immediately chains Compulsory Evacuation Device, that will return Castel back to the extra deck before you even have a chance to use this effect. Conversely, let's say you summoned either Phoenix or Unicorn. On summon, they have a trigger effect. To put it simply, if a monster effect says, if this card is summoned, do this, then you can choose to activate that monster's effect before your opponent has a chance to respond to the summon. Going back to the example I mentioned a second ago, that means that you would be able to use your effect to get rid of their card before they have a chance to activate Compulsory Evacuation Device, meaning these effects are insanely good and most of the time you'll get them off. Now, when it comes to choosing just one of these two, I'd give the edge to Phoenix because it's only a super rare, it's Link 2, meaning it's much easier to summon, and a lot of the problem cards you'd want to get rid of are just spell and traps anyway. However, most decks that Link summon have no issues getting out a Link 3 monster, and there are definitely times when you need Unicorn to get rid of a card that you don't want in your opponent's graveyard. But my answer is just to get them both. They're available in the main box Future Circuit, which is by far the best box to invest your gems in for long-term progression in Duel Links. You also get Dark Hole and Bottomless Trap Hole, two very good staples. This is why they take the top spots. Future Circuit is a high priority box to open. If you have gems saved up, this is the box to go with. Now, if you're interested in learning about some of the best staples in Duel Links, check out the video on screen now, and I will catch you in the next one.